Donald Trump not in office yet, but companies already responding to the rhetoric.
Just this week, Ford canceling plans for a new $1.6 billion plant in Mexico and is going to invest $700 million in a Michigan factory instead. The president-elect also ripping into GM and Toyota for building autos south of the border, threatening a large border tax. And Trump never even mentioned Black & Decker, but it preemptively announced it is moving more jobs inside the U.S.
To our Fox Business All-Stars, Charlie Gasparino and Cheryl Casone. Charlie, you've reported that Donald Trump's threats are on the top mind of boardrooms and investors.
It is.
Just reading that. Is it?
Well,
Have you spoken to board people that they've said that they've actually had board of directors meetings?
Bankers. Whenever there's an M&A deal, you know, there's all these sort of externalities that bankers talk about. You know a lot about this. You've covered M&A. And, you know, they talk about, you know, currency flows. They talk about, you know, what's going on with regulation. Now, from what I understand, as part of these deals, they're talking about Trump. And they're talking about if there is an offloading of jobs overseas, how he's going to react. And they're planning for that in these M&A deals. And you'll see that with anything going on. Listen, AT&T Time Warner is going to be an interesting thing. Donald Trump during the campaign said he hated it just because of CNN is owned by Time Warner. Who knows what they're going to propose to them in terms of jobs, keeping jobs here, and building the workforce. So I think this is kind of a good thing. In the old days, and part of me says, listen, part of me is a capitalist, says, you know, I don't want government dictating to private industry. That's called fascism, by the way. But remember, in the old days, pre-Trump, businesses would try to figure out how to offload jobs overseas. That would be how do we save money and put jobs overseas? Now what they're saying is, how do we stay out of this dude's crosshairs and keep jobs here? I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It obviously depends on how far he takes it.
Yeah. I mean, Cheryl, what do you think of that? Because when companies talk about keeping jobs here, it has to make economic sense for them no matter what. But that's something that Trump understands. So when they come to him and say, look, you've got to make regulation lighter, you've got to make taxes lower, you've got to make energy cheap, like you have to make it make sense, he does understand those economics. Do you think or no?
I think that he understands the economics, but more importantly, these companies understand that this is a PR campaign right now. Donald Trump is on Twitter. It's a PR campaign. He's not even in office yet.
He's on Twitter?
But
I didn't know he was on Twitter. Is he on Twitter?
Are you on Twitter?
He tweets like, you know, once a day or so.
Well, this morning's tweets were great.
You brought up Stanley Black & Decker. But what they have done, I think, is so interesting. They've already got 28 plants in the nation right now. They're adding a 29th. We don't know where yet because they're buying craftsmen from Sears. Smart business. They were already buying craftsmen, so they're going to open up one more plant. But they use that as kind of a, they're trying to get ahead of Donald Trump. And I think a lot of CEOs, a lot of boardrooms are, how can we get ahead of Donald Trump like Ford did this week and Mark Fields? Let's announce this now before we get caught in the crosshairs of him and become his next target on Twitter.
I think you make a great point, particularly on the PR aspect. And here's where it gets a little problematic. Are these jobs being kept here because of Trump? Or are the companies just using the excuse, oh, we're going to keep some jobs here, even though they were going to do it anyway, to appease him and to get a PR boost? I think it's up to journalists to figure out, you know, okay,
why does it matter, though? Why does it matter? I mean, they're still keeping the jobs here. What difference does it make? Why?
Anyway.
Yeah, so what?
Why should they get you know, a pat on the back? They're not creating them.
Because they're setting an example for other companies that they should do the same.
They're not, because a lot of these deals that you're hearing were, for example, the head of Sony came into Donald Trump and said, we're going to invest all this money and all this stuff into the U.S. Guess what? That was announced in October. He used the Trump event for PR.
You talk about SoftBank. You talk about the SoftBank.
What's his name? Masayoshi Son.
Yeah.
All right.
Whether jobs are coming back or they're just staying, either way, they are jobs here.
But they're going to stay anyway.
I have not gotten your take on the fact that I think it's 4, it might even be 5, Goldman Sachs alumni or Goldman Sachs current employees who are leaving the firm are joining the administration. I have not heard your take on it.
Intrinsically attached to Goldman Sachs, like Jay Clayton, the head of the pending head of the SEC. Listen, it takes a lot of swamp dwellers to drain the swamp, according to Donald Trump. Right? I mean, listen, this is the reality from the truth part of Donald Trump.
Why haven't the Trump backers been more upset about this?
Well, because who knows why? I mean, you know, you got to get.
The swamp is about politicians. You got people are not politicians.
Really? They did.
They did. Your point. Yeah.
Goldman Sachs wasn't the firm that straddled the Washington Wall Street nexus.
Draining the swamp is about getting people out of Washington. As far as I know, Goldman Sachs is still here in New York.
Didn't Donald Trump? Oh, really? They have no Washington presence, right?
As far as I'm concerned, Goldman Sachs is a Wall Street firm. They're not politicians.
Really?
Yeah.
Robert Rubin, Hank Paulson.
Is Robert Rubin joining the administration?
No, but Steve Mnuchin
I didn't know he was joining.
You hear Gary Cohn? You hear Gary Cohn?
Hey,
the former
I'm not
Obama
saying
supporter?
I love Goldman Sachs. I'm saying, how are they in the Washington swamp? They work on Wall Street.
You know what you have to do? There's a venture called Google. Tap it in. It's very easy.
Can I answer your earlier question, though?
Yes, they will.
I do want to answer your earlier question because it went unanswered, by the way. But why did consumer confidence? It's because of the overall reaching promises of Donald Trump that he's going to lower the corporate tax rate, that he's going to pull back regulation. The average person understands this. The average American that's getting surveyed by the Conference Board sees that, and they think this guy's going to come in and he's going to help me. Now, that's data that may be different in 6 months when reality starts to set in up to the inauguration. But again, back to the corporations, they are trying to get ahead of this because they know if like Apple, what is Apple going to do? When's he going to go after Tim Cook again? That could be coming very soon.
Charlie, Cheryl, thanks for joining us. That does it for us here on Wall Street Week.
Next week, our guest is Morgan Creek Capital Management CEO Mark Yusko. We'll see you then.